This video was made using insights from vidIQ. Stick around after the video to find out how we used vidIQ as our secret YouTube weapon while making it. As the rest of the world was dealing with hangovers and still eating turkey sandwiches, something unexpected happened in the Russian-Ukraine war. Vladimir Putin, not usually known for his festive spirit, asked for a Christmas truce. Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky almost choked on his vareniki when the news was delivered to him. But gall on that man, he thought. Was Putin really in the mood for peace, revealing to the world his more humanitarian side? Or was this proposed ceasefire cooked up with the darkest of intentions, coming from a man very well known for his seemingly boundless cunning and conniving nature? Before we untangle this web, you need to hear some basic facts. Christmas for the Russians is not the same as Christmas for most of you guys. Since the country is of the Eastern Orthodox variety of Christianity, things are slightly different. Same goes for Eastern Orthodox Christians everywhere, including in Ukraine. Simple reason is they're basing Christmas time on the Julian calendar, which Julius Caesar introduced in 45 BC. Most folks go by the Gregorian calendar, the one named after Pope Gregory XIII. So when Putin called for a temporary peace, he was thinking about a 36-hour period starting on January 6th. It's worth noting here that while Putin said he's Eastern Orthodox, no one knows just how serious he is about God and everything connected to God. His piety might merely be theater. Maybe he embraces the Christian religion only to maintain a certain public image. Just this last Christmas, the Kremlin sent people the message thanking the church for unifying society, preserving our historical memory, educating youth, and strengthening the institution of family. That's what we mean by creating a certain public image. Many leaders around the world talk this way about religion, but it doesn't necessarily mean in their private time they practice what they preach. With that in mind, you might wonder if Putin was trying to look devout last Christmas, but in the back of his mind, he wasn't thinking about the sacrifice Jesus Christ made for the good of humanity, but was adding up all the ways that being outwardly pious can help him in the capacity of war and public relations. We can't say for sure. Only Putin himself knows how he feels about Christianity. We can say that his war in Ukraine was made a lot easier with religion at his side. The Ukrainians, for the most part, don't believe Putin is the kind of guy who would wish goodwill on mankind, not at Christmas and not at any part of the year. For many, Putin uses religion to gain support, given that so many people in Russia and beyond are Orthodox Christians. He knows if you want to invade countries, you need God behind you. Ask most leaders of warring countries from the past to the present. War is all good when you have the green light from the big man. As young Russian men die and are severely injured on the battlefield in the tens of thousands, possibly more than 100,000 so far, Putin needs God. He has to look devout at Christmas and talk about peace and goodwill. Let's remember that Russia also likes to think that it is the protector of Ukraine's Orthodox Christians. When you think about it, Putin would have been mad not to conspicuously support Christianity last Christmas. In terms of political strategy, it was absolutely necessary. That's exactly what the Ukrainian leadership thought after Putin announced the possible ceasefire. They called the truce a cynical trap, just another move in the propaganda stakes. They didn't believe Putin's proposed provisional peace for a second, and as you'll see, they had good reason to think that way. Before we talk about that, we should introduce a man who wields a lot of power in Russia, a guy Putin certainly needs on his side. He is Vladimir Mikhailovich Gundyayev, the so-called Patriarch of Moscow and all Russia. He is known as His Holiness. This guy is the top dog where religion is concerned in Russia. Over the last century, Christians haven't had it easy in Russia. The communists, when Lenin and Stalin were in charge, persecuted and killed many of them. Over the years, millions of Christians were executed. The persecution only really ended when communism finally collapsed in Russia. It's understandable then that the church leaders in Russia, especially the older ones, are somewhat wary of the state. Still, Gundyayev is behind Putin 100%. It was him that called for the truce. But let's not fool ourselves and think Putin wasn't the one who came up with the idea. Gundyayev is said to have KGB connections back in the day, the organization Putin worked for before he got into politics. They've remained close for many years. Gundyayev plays a key part in Putin's politics these days. As the saying goes, they're as snug as a bug in a rug, with the rug being Russia. They often meet to talk shop. When Russia invaded Syria, Gundyayev gave full support of the church. Putin has paid back in kind, letting it slide when Gundyayev was seen enjoying some time on a luxury yacht or when he was filmed wearing a watch worth around $30,000. In short, these two guys are in cahoots, which works for both of them. They would both be hit hard if the other withdrew their support. That won't happen though, as the proposed Christmas truce is proof. It shows exactly that the church is being utilized in this war. When the war started, Gunyaev came out and talked about the forces of evil in Ukraine. After Ukraine had success in its counteroffensive later in the year, and many young men from Russia were being sent home in body bags, Gunyaev reminded the public that all the dead soldiers had committed a sacrifice that washes away all sin. For centuries, religious leaders have said things like this. Putin needs such words, so again, this is why he was so devout looking at Christmas time. As we said, Ukrainians already believe the Russian church leader is Putin's war servant, both working together to propagandize the people. No sooner was the truce announcement made public that one of President Zelensky's top advisors said the Russian Orthodox Church was nothing but a war propagandist dressed up as a humane entity. He added that this is the same church that has called for genocide in Ukraine and has supported a greater militarization of the Russian Federation. Ukraine didn't just say no to the truce, but said you can stick it up your egoditya. They knew what Putin was thinking. About how folks feel about Christmas truces, Putin understands very well the entire world shed a tear for the first time when they heard about the unofficial Christmas truces that happened on battlefields in Europe during World War I, when British and German soldiers had peaceful get-togethers in no man's land and talked about football while handing each other cigarettes. Calling a truce was supposed to be a powerful bit of propaganda, encouraging the world's people to reminisce about stories of foes getting along for a day at the height of bloody carnage. Ukraine said the gesture wasn't just hollow, but an insult to anyone who really wants peace. The country's officials said that after Putin had called for the ceasefire, his soldiers were busy exchanging fire with Ukrainian soldiers on the fronts in the east and the south. If he was serious about a truce, would his troops not have at least stopped firing for a while? Those shellings took place just hours after the Kremlin announced. As a large number of Orthodox Christians reside in the areas of the hostilities, we call on the Ukrainian side to declare a ceasefire to allow them to attend church services on Christmas Eve, as well as on Christmas Day. Around the time those shellings were happening, the governor of the Kherson region said there had been a strike on a fire station that killed one rescuer and wounded another 4 people. Ukrainian officials also reported many buildings had been wrecked by strikes in the eastern city of Kramatorsk. Still, a Russian spokesperson said it had only struck back after its positions had been attacked. We're not sure who fired first, but we do know that one Ukrainian leader was so concerned about a fake ceasefire that he wanted Ukrainian people in battle-ravaged areas to not even attend church, saying there could be terrorist attacks due to this so-called truce. Was he exaggerating? Sure, he might have been. We can't only blame Putin for deviousness. War is a messy business. Nonetheless, a Ukrainian MP named Inna Sovsun told the BBC, "We're 2.5 hours into this proclaimed ceasefire, and actually the whole territory of Ukraine is under air raid alert, so I think that speaks for itself." Ukraine said there's no way it would agree to any kind of peace, not even for 5 minutes, if the Russians didn't get out of its territories. The country said it doesn't go around attacking troops and civilians in foreign countries as Russia does. It said it only fights occupiers, so there would only be peace if Russia left. Let's also just remember here something that happened in the Syrian war. At certain times, Russian and Syrian forces said they were opening what is called humanitarian corridors. These are ceasefires in areas so the population of war-torn cities and towns can get away without becoming a casualty. It seems that didn't happen, and when people fled, the bombs still dropped. One Syrian activist told the press, "When they talk about these humanitarian corridors or ceasefires, we never believed them. How can you trust someone to stop who is bombing you all the time?" Would Putin have done the same thing again? That's what Ukraine thought. President Zelensky said the truce was a tactic to halt the fighting so Russian forces could regroup in the areas of the eastern Donbass. He appeared on TV and told the people they now want to use Christmas as a cover, albeit briefly, to stop the advances of our boys in Donbass and bring equipment, ammunition, and mobilize troops closer to our positions. Some of you viewers we know have hearts of gold, and you like to believe in man's humanity to man at Christmas time. Sorry guys, but we have to tell you, Ukraine or anyone else who might sound cynical about Putin's truce is just telling you as it is. And that's what we think anyway. Putin is hardly inventing the wheel here. Nations throughout history have used peace negotiations or part-time truces as propaganda. It's just the reality of war. Even when those Brits and Germans and all their allies and enemies were playing soccer and burying their dead together during World War I, the news folks received at home in their respective countries was all about how their troops were ever so kind and not subhuman like those other troops. In war, each side wants to say the enemy drew first blood, and they also want to seem like they're the ones who are the victims and only want peace. We might recall January of 1968, when the North Vietnamese and the Viet Cong said they would lay off the killing for the Lunar New Year. Did they do it? Like hell, they only used it as a piece of propaganda, but those devious merchants of death also used it to launch a surprise attack on the South Vietnamese. It seems truces weren't always observed properly many times throughout history. We found an article in the New York Times from 1971 that talked about a Christmas truce in Vietnam. The article stated, American and South Vietnamese spokesmen said the truce had been violated at least 19 times by the enemy. The Viet Cong's clandestine radio accused American and South Vietnamese forces of at least 170 violations. The story said this was actually a good year in terms of carnage being caused while the truce was on. People died on both sides, bombs still dropped. On Christmas Day, American warplanes bombed the hell out of Laos and Cambodia. The article explains that B-52 bombers flew from Thailand and made a mess of trucks on Laos' Ho Chi Minh Trail complex. For the Viet Cong, it was business as usual as they fired on American planes. During the Iran-Iraq War, Saddam Hussein's government often offered so-called humanitarian truces, not necessarily as a tactic to hit an army when they were off guard, but to make themselves look like peace lovers, and the other side look like warmongering barbarians. So yes, Putin is hardly reinventing the wheel. He's making sure people see him in church. His friendliness with the Mr. Big of the church, the possible strikes during the ceasefire, it's all just par for the course, not just in Russia but the rest of the world. We're not saying there's never been a truce that was mainly for humanitarian reasons. Trust is such an alien commodity during wars that even if one side did mean it about temporary peace, it's very likely the other side wouldn't believe it. After all, they have a lot to lose. Can you imagine if Ukraine did take a break, sat back, gazed at the starry skies while talking about the wonder of human kindness, and then the Russian forces took advantage of that to mount an attack on the snoozing troops? It's not certain that Russia would use the truce for tactical advantage. Still, one thing for sure is when Putin told the Russian people that he wanted a ceasefire so the people of Ukraine could enjoy their Christmas, he was doing so to get the public on his side, so they'd think he had a heart. It probably worked to some extent, and with Ukraine saying no to the truce, he could use that to tell them, see, who's the warmongers in this conflict? With that in mind, he actually played an ace card. You could say Ukraine should have offered the truce first. Still, we doubt Ukraine was too concerned about not taking advantage of the propaganda war. On Christmas Day, it got a load of armored combat vehicles and high-tech tanks it had been asking for from the US and Germany. The US also promised more billions in military aid. Santa delivered. There's no doubt about that. It doesn't mean Putin doesn't want peace at some point. It seems to some people right now that he's just hoping that he'll be given an off-ramp. Ukraine, though, with the full support of the West, with all those highly sophisticated weapons flooding into the country, will no doubt demand that if there is an off-ramp, that going down is a damn bumpy ride. It's also highly unlikely Ukraine will want to end the war while all those fancy Western weapons are coming to its aid, some of which have reportedly ended up as far as Africa. Weapons getting into the wrong hands is another reason folks in the West might want that off-ramp to come sooner rather than later. Putin knows some people in the West are criticizing their country's support for the war, so again, playing the truce card was useful. What Putin did when he held out that olive branch at Christmas was very likely heard by the critics of the war in Europe and the US. It's only natural that some people want this war over and done with, seeing as men and women and children are dying, and it's affecting how people live all over the world, even in Africa, where humanitarian aid has been affected in some countries. You can't blame people for wanting this thing to be over. So, although many people were skeptical about it, Putin's ceasefire might have at least made him look good in some people's eyes outside of Ukraine. After all, that's his whole shtick, that Ukraine doesn't want peace, and the US, with its NATO allies, is fighting a proxy war and also don't want peace. It's not surprising, then, that he called for a truce. It wasn't even a gamble. It was a foregone conclusion, even if it was unexpected for most folks when it happened. But we'll leave you with the words of Germany's Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock. She had this to say about Russia's state of mind at Christmas. If Putin wanted peace, he would take his soldiers home, and the war would be over. Ever wondered how we decide what to make videos about? We're going to let you in on a little secret. It's vidIQ. It lets us see exactly how many searches per month a certain keyword gets. More searches means more potential viewers, but of course there's more to it than that. vidIQ also shows you the competition for that keyword. The less competition there is, the more likely that your video will stand out, which means more views for your video. I know it sounds too easy, but it really is. You don't need to have a genius IQ, you need to have vidIQ. But try it for yourself. Get a 30-day trial for only $1 by going to vidiq.com/theinfoshow. Now, you need to watch the one change to Russia Putin couldn't predict, war in Ukraine, or have a look at how Putin went from KGB spy to president of Russia.